Three, two, one, zero. Hello, welcome everybody to this webinar about sharing collaborative economy. My name is Paweł Sroczyński and I will be your host today. Before we start, I will remind you that in Cohabitat we do webinars in interesting topics from alternative technologies like natural building, resilient technologies, open source movement, also maker movement. And today we decided to make a collaboration with OuiShare because we have heard that what we are doing lately is something called sharing and collaborative economy. It is very interesting in Poland. The term is not so well known. I'm sure that you will be very interested to hear what is the sharing collaborative economy in practice and also in theoretical aspect. So I would like to introduce Antona Leonard from OuiShare. I will now give you a voice.
Can you hear me well? Oh, you can hear me well. Fantastic. So amazing. So I'm very pleased to do this webinar with everyone. I've been involved in the collaborative economy for 3 years now, and I can tell you that it's growing very fast all around the world. And I feel that in Poland it's going to be probably even bigger than in many cities and many countries all around the world. So please do ask your questions on the chat, and I will try to answer them as fast as possible. So in order to understand what's happening now in this collaborative economy, we need to I wanted to show you that we are moving from a world where there were only big companies, big corporations, a vertical top-down economy toward a more networked economy. So this slide is about that. Okay, so I keep talking. So we are moving from a top-down vertical economy toward a more networked economy in which basically everyone can contribute. I like to say that it's never been so difficult to get a job because, you know, in the economy it's so complicated right now, and it's never been so easy to create your Now you can hear me? Yes. Yeah, I don't know what's happening. Okay, fantastic. So, okay, guys. So we are moving from a top-down vertical economy toward a more networked economy. And I like to say that in this economy now with the internet, with social media, it's never been so easy to create opportunities for you. So, you know, with the problems now in the economy, it's never been so difficult to get a job. It's never been so difficult to get a job in a normal company, in a traditional company. And at the same time, it's never been so easy to contribute to an open source project. It's never been so easy to create your own activity. It's never been so easy to follow your passion and to basically build the job you want to have for the rest of your life. And this is the collaborative economy is an illustration of this move towards a more distributed economy. Can you hear me now? Okay, so maybe moving toward what is collaborative consumption. So before you have traditional media, traditional newspaper, Microsoft Windows, and now you have blogs, you have YouTube, Linux, and basically all those projects are showing a move toward low cost and democratic means for communication, coordination, collaboration, and logistics. So this shows basically the move toward a more collaborative economy because blogs, YouTube, Linux are all part of this collaborative, more contributive economy. And what we wanted to talk about now is the move towards this common-based peer production economy, and this quote is basically showing that the past decade was about finding new collaboration and innovation models on the web, and the next decade will be about applying them to the real world. So the makers movement, collaborative consumption, forms of peer production, peer-to-peer finance are all examples of this move toward more collaboration in the economy thanks to the internet. Yes, I will share the slideshow. So starting with collaborative consumption, there is a slide afterwards. Here you can see examples of startups in the collaborative consumption space. So of course Airbnb is probably the most famous example, but there are many other ones. So the startups that are growing faster in the collaborative consumption space are Airbnb. In the like with Airbnb you can share your home. BlaBlaCar or carpooling.com, you can share a ride. There is also cookening where you can eat at somebody's place. And like very interesting examples like Jump, where you can share your own car in a city. And also peer-to-peer car sharing, where you can rent your car to your neighbor. So all those examples, all those startups are part of the collaborative consumption space. And talking about peer-to-peer finances, here are some examples of crowdfunding with Bank and Ulule, which are the two fastest growing crowdfunding companies in Europe. Maybe I will let Alastair talking about the makers movement now. Are we going to do that? This is so funny. I mean, I don't hear anything. I don't know what's happening. I don't know if somebody is hearing me. Well, do you guys have any questions? You got some? I'm not eating shit. Who's eating?
So I can put audio. What's up? Alastair, can you try if you can turn on your audio and maybe use Slack and change slides?
How's that? Can anyone hear me? Excellent. Good. Oh, this is great. Cool. Well, thanks very much for this. I really, I'm always trying to, I always think there should be more heckling. And so far, this is very promising. So please, hopefully there'll be lots of heckling. The collection of slides that are here is a kind of random hodgepodge. So excuse if it's not directly linked to what I'm talking about, but we'll have fun. So hopefully I can change these slides with a bit of luck. There we go. No, skipping a slide there. Okay. So the slides are going to jump around. So yeah, my name's Alistair Parvin. I'm one of the co-founders of a project which we began about 2 years ago called WikiHouse, which is one of a whole bunch of an increasing number of open hardware projects that's happening all over the place, frankly, and far more exciting ones than ours, I'm sure. But so one of our kind of favorite quotes, which we dug up a long time ago, was this one by Maynard Keynes, who said this thing: "It's easier to ship recipes than cakes and biscuits." Or is my sound dying? Okay, I'll just everyone scream if it's dead. He said it's easier to ship recipes than cakes and biscuits, which is interesting, right? Because it's blindingly obvious. But it's interesting because, of course, that's not how our industrial economy works, and we all know that. We know that pretty much the whole of production since industrialization has been focused on the idea of centralized manufacture, centralized design by professionals in studios who then ship the recipes to a factory, again, centrally produced materials in a factory somewhere, and then we ship those goods in this huge logistics, oil-intensive system all around the world. So the promise that's been kind of put up of the third industrial revolution is, in a way, to realize the obvious. And that's partly been, of course, about the web, the capacity to share that, and we saw that first with open source software, because straightforwardly we got to a point where products could be copied and pasted. So I'm going to skip back to the shift now that we're experiencing is actually building off the back of the first open hardware projects, which were really just sharing information. So, I mean, and they've been around for a long, long time. So there's things like Hexayurt in architecture, but one of my favorites was a project called Free Beer, who just published the recipe literally for beer. For a long time. The disruption, I think, that's coming along now is about frankly being driven by the lowering cost of digital manufacturing tools like 3D printers famously, or this, which is a CNC machine. We're getting to this point where suddenly factories are no longer necessarily these concentrated things, but potentially can be any old where. And so the idea of the factory being this distributed manufacturing process is really kind of tipping the balance and really upsetting things. In a way, this idea that you know, you can just download something and print something out in itself is not the third industrial revolution. It might just mean that you have, you know, Apple, hugely concentrated intellectual property, and you download your iPhone in the future. But that in itself is not the revolution. The revolution is that this is going to create a world in which essentially IP is simultaneously the most valuable thing in the world, but also it wants to be free, just like all information has been so far. And so there's this huge power, because for the first time we can share the recipes, if you like, the instructions and the manufacturing files for very high performance products that anybody can download and very, very easily manufacture for themselves. What that does is, of course, it challenges the idea of the kind of one-size-fits-all economy, you know, which we've all become so used to. But also it shifts us away from the idea potentially of seeing objects as products to a world in which we see objects as systems. So when we're working on something like WikiHouse, and you can, oh, that's right. So when we're working on something like WikiHouse, which you can see one prototype behind me, what we're actually working on is not so much open source products, but open source systems. It's almost like creating a coding language for physical things, so that it's possible for other people to hack and edit and change those things. So yeah, it was first led by this wave of digitization, in kind of the open source world. And what's being driven now is this wider and wider availability of the tools and the fabrication capabilities. And of course, the most famous example of that is Fab Labs, right, which have done probably more than anything else to create not just access to these tools, but also, if you like, the institutions around the idea of what I call a kind of community factory. Let me just get my bearings on this. Yeah, good. So what we're seeing is a shift across almost every product area. We're seeing the rise of open source technologies. So in the area of cars, there's projects like WikiSpeed. And in the area of things like tools and construction, you know, famous examples are the Open Source Ecology Project and the Open Tech Forever guys. So what we're going to start seeing more and more are people essentially developing an open source version of pretty much everything and distributing it to be used by both professionals and by amateurs. Effectively, and I'm going to skip down a slide here. Effectively, what we're talking about is potentially the ability to make a Wikipedia of stuff, right? To do exactly what Wikipedia has done for information, we can start to do for physical objects. And I mean, that's a completely fascinating prospect in the sense that we can begin to imagine in a world where we're used to the idea, if we want access to physical hardware, we have to consume it, and we have to be able to afford to consume it. The idea that actually now amateurs can make for themselves and get access to hardware and products and very, very high performance. And it means potentially we can also distribute sustainable technologies in a way that hasn't been capable before. So whenever I meet somebody who's designing a sustainable technology, you know, the famous phrase, you know, the future's already here, it just isn't very well distributed yet. Actually, it's the distribution which will change things. And so whenever I meet somebody who's working on a sustainable technology, I ask, what's the maximum number of people who can actually get access to this? Because unless you're Coca-Cola or Nokia and you've worked out a really, really smart way to make everybody consumers, to distribute your product around the whole world, to diffuse it and to lower those costs, then actually open sharing is the only way we're going to distribute really sustainable solutions to these sorts of technologies. But I think there's a number of problems with this, and I just want to finish off by highlighting what I think some of the barriers are that are really, really interesting around here. And the first one is that an open license is not enough. What we actually have to do is design products which radically lower thresholds, in other words, make it much easier to design and to produce. And those thresholds are time and cost and skill and carbon. So we're working with things like parametric design tools, and if check out sketchchair.cc is a really good example of this, where you don't need to be a skilled designer to make something. You can just essentially make an in-browser design tool where you just say, I want, you know, my product to be this big or this big, and it will generate straight through to fabrication. And equally, what we're developing are hardware tools that are really super, super easy to build and super, super quick. And that's the big challenge. So it's not just about licenses, it's actually about designing systems and products that lower the thresholds. The second is, what are the open standards and how do we document these things? What does a Wikipedia page look like for hardware? And actually Open Tech Forever have done probably, from my mind, the most exciting you know, kind of shot at that so far. Equally, we have no GitHub, right? We have no GitHub that makes it as easy to share and fork and adapt hardware as it is to do that for code. So thinking about the documentation and standards, and that's a big problem, by the way, when we start talking about a mass customized economy, that's sort of in conflict with the need to have common standards. And we can tell that by the fact that I'm speaking English right now, right? actually for a lot of you guys, English is not your first language, and yet for some reason we're having, just in order to communicate with each other, we have to agree certain standards, and that's an issue. And the second one is liability. Liability is a big deal, right? Because when code goes wrong, people lose money, but when hardware goes wrong, people lose limbs or their lives. And so we're going to have to completely rethink our approach to legislation and certification and things like that. And third one is materials. You know, actually, we work with plywood, but that's only kind of open really in the West. So actually, earth is the most open material. So working towards more open materials. And finally, and I think this is hopefully a really good thing to leave and lead on to the next speaker, is the issue of the institutions and the governance that we build around these products. How do we, if we're going to produce things as a community, how do we structure ourselves and yet openly and have open governance, and yet in a way that allows everybody to realistically earn a living? And I saw somebody comment earlier on this question of monetization. It's seriously one of the most interesting questions in this realm right now, which is how do you monetize without compromising the open values of what you're doing? It's completely possible, by the way. I mean, it's not a problem, the idea of creating this kind of open derivative market for people to do that. And we're taking our first tentative steps towards doing that. So for example, the WikiHouse trademark, we opened it up under an open constitution so that there's other groups who can call themselves WikiHouse as well, as it were. And really and we're wanting to move that onto the next level. And what we actually need to do is build not just, if you're a hardware designer, don't just go out and develop a hardware solution and share it openly, although do that as well. But we actually need to build the tools and the platforms that make it really easier and easier for us to structure ourselves legally and to govern ourselves in a practical, efficient, low energy, but actually ultimately open way. And I'd like to just sign off with a really another cool quote which I really love, which is the Maslow's hammer one, right? So a man with a hammer, every problem looks like a nail, which is interesting because a bit like this Clay Shirky quote, which was discussed earlier, actually the hardware we use in our tools are intrinsically linked with the society in the way that we see it. So that all these various open hardware projects, although it might look like a total mishmash, actually collectively, they do have potential, arguably, if we look back at the last industrial revolution, more powerful potential to change the politics and economics of our day-to-day lives when it comes to issues of debt, issues of democracy in the way that we build cities, and the way that we use and consume products. Cool. I hope I didn't go on too long. Cool. So on the open license, on the open license issue, basically we have the trademark, but then we've essentially, hi Justina, we've essentially published a single constitution, so that, and you can go and check that out. If you go to the community page on wikihouse.cc, you can look at that constitution. Again, to make stuff low threshold, it's just 3 pages and it's mostly visual. And the third page, if 2 people want to get together and form a WikiHouse team, it tells them how they can do that. It's basically, they just sign that constitution, and the WikiHouse kind of area name is there. It's a bit like TEDx, basically. Yes, everything on WikiHouse is shared under CC0 license. Again, we're very careful there that we are not locking out commercial activity. Cool.
Can you hear me? Oh, you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Do we have some more
Yeah.
questions?
Sorry for me being a little just a sound person. I'm a second pilot. I was not supposed to drive this. So how about we can just try to have 3 questions really fast, and then we're gonna go to Francesca. So do you have any questions? 1, 2, 3. Radar, radar. Anybody? Okay, so I will just ask you a question. So how can people get involved in open source projects?
It's different with all the different projects. I would to speak honestly from my heart. One of the things we find hard is that so many, because we only have so many hours in the day. So we're deliberately trying to structure stuff so that actually often, yes, engage with each project that you're kind of interested in or start your own project, but the single most powerful way that you can actually collaborate in an open source project is actually to take a challenge, work on it, do a hack, actually produce a solution to something, whether it's a tool or whether it's a product or whatever it is, and share it in the most compact, simple form that you can. Weirdly, something I call the paradox of collaboration is that although we celebrate the idea of mass collaboration and we love it, actually, conversely, some of the most powerful collaborative projects are the ones where we have to interact the least.
Yeah, so there's the next question that's actually linking to that. So, for example, there is a WikiHouse project. We say WikiHouse because you work with WikiHouse projects. So there is, for example, a WikiHouse in Rio, and there are many projects that start to spread all over the world, being connected to other projects. So this is a very growing initiative.
Yeah, which is amazing, really, in the sense that we still haven't completed the first full, complete house, although we're getting close, and the WikiHouse New Zealand team are. But the important thing to clarify in the phrasing of Barry's question is it's not necessarily us working on those projects. We as WikiHouse UK and founders, we obviously support them in every way we can afford to. But actually, those are teams, like chapters who have set up, they've signed the constitution, and they are a WikiHouse team, just as we are. So we're in a way we're just one of many teams. And one of my kind of paradoxical roles, in a way, is to promote and grow WikiHouse as a platform, but at the same time to not let it be focused on me as an individual, or even us, the other founder groups. So we almost want to, on the long run, just become one of many people and not find ourselves in a position of individual power or monopoly.
Well, thank you. I will try to give the voice to Francesca then. Let me try, if I know, make a presenter. There you go.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, looks good. I hope it's loud enough. Let me know if something isn't good. Okay, so give me 1 second to go to the part of the presentation that's mine. So I'm Francesca, and I've been with OuiShare for about a year now. I've worked on lots of different projects then, really developed all the kinds of areas, and right now I'm focusing on building the community in Germany. And I also helped organize OuiShare Fest, which was this big conference about in Paris in May. So the collaborative economy, OuiShare told you a lot about the whole open source developments and the maker movement. I'm going to focus a little more now on some of the challenges that the collaborative economy faces on a more general level, and also especially in the area of collaborative consumption, where there's a lot of startups at the moment. So here there's a couple interesting quotes from some articles that appeared recently that really underline a challenge that sort of also I noticed when I started working with the collaborative economy and also researching it about 2 years ago. And that's pretty much this discrepancy between people versus profit, in terms of that a lot of companies in the space, a lot of people that are starting projects, sort of start with the whole motivation. We want to change the way business works. We want to change the economy. People are more important than profit maximization, and they want to try to change the value chain. And as things have developed and a lot of companies have grown and there's been a lot of venture capital investment, some of these startups have obviously maybe changed their alignment, or there's been quite a sort of a conflict between those that really seem focused only more on the economical side of the equation, and the others that look more at the social benefits and the environmental benefits. So that's why some of these articles that you can see here, like collaboration is dead, long live the real sharing economy, it sort of brings up a lot of question as of what is the real sharing economy. That's definitely a question that's still not exactly answered. But what definitely can be said is that the developments look different worldwide. In the US, there's a lot of startups and companies, for instance, Airbnb, the peer-to-peer vacation rental platform, or also Lyft and Uber, that are different types of on-demand ride-sharing, taxi-sharing apps that have a huge, significant amount of investment from venture capitalists. And so they're really driving this economy in a direction that not everyone agrees with, and that is definitely going to be a challenge ahead because there's many different motivations there. And one really interesting book that I think was mentioned before is called Swarmwise by Falkvinge, the founder of the Pirate Party in Sweden. Yes, and so that's a really interesting book to read about the swarm economy and these new kinds of motivations for building organizations. And as Alistair also mentioned, so finding a way to actually make everyone be able to make ends meet, and also be rewarded for the value they create, without ending up in this huge, situation we're in right now already, that everyone's just trying to maximize profit and disregarding the human side of business. And so moving on to the next big challenge is innovation versus regulation. As I think Alistair had also mentioned, some of the projects that they work on, that there's a lot of gray areas. Let me go back again. There's a lot of gray areas that many of these new concepts have emerged in. So a lot of them are so new and really just sort of use the internet, don't know what to do with it yet. And there's sort of been a lot of difficulties, and so how do we regulate these? Should we ban them? Should we create new laws? So that's why there's a lot of challenges ahead. One example is, as I already had mentioned, Sidecar, Lyft, and Uber. Those are 3 different platforms for on-demand ride sharing. What that means is that a private person can rent out a seat in their car to a person driving by, the same as in a taxi, really. So there's a simple app that you can use, and if you're on the street, you can just book a taxi on that app, and another person, in the case of Lyft, there's a big pink mustache on front of the car, and then you can tell that that's a person who's driving with Lyft. And in a lot of cities, especially San Francisco, that's been a great solution to these huge taxi issues they've had, that there weren't enough taxis. So in one way, these platforms have filled a huge gap and offered a lot of cheap taxis for people. But the problem with regulation that has emerged is, for instance, that people said that the regulatory institutions said that these people aren't licensed taxi drivers. Of course, there's insurance questions, background checks, and a lot of things that don't exactly match with the official traditional economy. And so, as you can see, this year, there's been several back and forths in the whole regulation. First, they were practically banned. Then, even some drivers on the platform were arrested. And then luckily, because San Francisco is a very progressive city, and also Shareable Magazine, which is this magazine about the sharing economy in San Francisco, has done a lot of work to find out kind of policies one could create. They have finally actually managed to create a new law in San Francisco that is actually going to legalize and facilitate this kind of on-demand ride sharing. So that's actually a good example of how this process has really moved forward, and with the help of the city, they've created a law to make it easier for people to use these platforms. And so just to mention a couple other examples, in Germany also, peer-to-peer car sharing, so the renting of a private car between individuals, also has just had a huge lawsuit. The lawsuit came from traditional rental car businesses that say if someone rents out their car, that automatically makes them like a rental car business, and then that also means you have to pay different taxes and are subject to different laws. So you can really see that when you look around, there's problems in all different countries. Airbnb, the peer-to-peer vacation rental platform where people rent out their own rooms or a whole house, has also had a lot of problems recently. They were forbidden in New York, also in Amsterdam. There's laws coming in Berlin. So there's definitely a lot of challenges ahead. And the main question in that case is also when are people actually using these platforms to commercially make money, and when is it just trying to cover the costs of the asset? Because, for instance, on Airbnb, there's a lot of people that are creating huge private, unregulated hotels. So they're really building a whole business out of this platform. And of course, it's understandable that that is not necessarily what the platforms were meant to be. And one thing to maybe also mention is that there's this new advocacy organization that has developed. It was created by several different startups and companies in the sharing economy space. It's called Peers, and it's an advocacy organization by users of the sharing economy for users. And this organization wants to help support different marketplaces to fight these battles, these regulatory battles, to move forward. I'm just trying to see if I have any important questions. Matthias says, would you say that these problems are connected with companies, the sharing economy initiatives who want to make profits? That's a good question. I think that it's actually both. So what's definitely very interesting is that a lot of the companies that have been having regulatory issues that have been in the headlines a lot are companies with venture capital investment that are quite big and that really want to make a lot of profits. And so I think that's maybe being frowned upon a little, because in many cases they're just also out to follow the rules of the traditional economy. But it's sort of, we have to see how it continues, I think, because especially an advocacy organization like Peers, I would hope to see them support small marketplaces that are in more niche sectors or sectors that aren't as big yet, and to not just support the big companies. So I think we'll see how that develops. Are there any questions on this second challenge before I continue with the last one? Otherwise, we can do a question after that. So the third challenge, in building this peer-to-peer society, a society in which individuals can transact with each other and connect and really organize their entire life by connecting through technology. One of the biggest challenges is trust. In one way, it already is something that has become a lot stronger through the web and all these connections that we have been creating. But on the other hand, there's still a very long way to go in terms of the trust that is necessary for all these different marketplaces to work. Because of course, on all of these different platforms, most of the time you're transacting with strangers, and also assets that are of a lot more value are being discussed. I don't know, discussing in a forum with a stranger, but it's you actually offering a stranger your house. So that's definitely a very different question. That's also a topic that I actually wrote my bachelor thesis about 1.5 years ago. And I also worked at a startup called TrustCloud for several months that I'm going to say something about in 1 second. Because there's a lot of different companies have emerged that are trying to sort of solve this issue that can't really be solved directly, but they're really just trying to figure out, okay, how can we make it easier for people to trust each other in an online context, and also really, you know, dare to do things like offer someone your car or stay in their house, and not just talk to them on the web. And so when you look at it, there's actually no, not yet, not back. There's a couple different layers that people are looking at, or that you try to improve on the web. And so one of them, of course, is just your identity, so who you are, and confirming that you are who you say you are. There's a lot of different ways to do that through emails or phone numbers. And there's also things like real identity verification with background checks, or having someone come to your door and checking who you are. Then, of course, there's social data, which that's been really like a sort of a bubble. When Facebook and Twitter emerged, companies like Clout, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's a website that measures online influence. So there was a lot of buzz around these platforms saying, hey, they can really like produce all this trust, and this is really valuable. I think it's very questionable how valuable all this social data really is, but it's definitely one important component of the bigger equation to create trust, but it's probably not the only information you can rely on. And so all the social data like information from Facebook, Twitter, other social networks like LinkedIn are definitely interesting indicators of who you are, and can confirm what social circles you're in and who you know. But of course, there's another very important layer, which is transactional data, which all of you, I think, know from eBay, for instance. So every transaction you do, people give you ratings. They tell you if they were happy. You can see how many successful transactions you had, for instance. And so that's like really a third important layer to verify who you are, and to make it easier for people to trust. And on the other side, there's been a couple of different mechanisms that platforms have created. Like, for instance, Airbnb now offers a $1 million host guarantee. So if something happens on the platform, they say that they will pay for that, up to that sum. And there's all kinds of insurances for peer-to-peer car-sharing marketplaces and things like that companies are trying to offer to make it easier for people to trust. But so those are really two different questions. So, you know, do you want a platform to insure you, to offer you money if something goes wrong? Or do you want to create a social framework that makes you actually just be more trusting in other people and not actually think that anything will go wrong? And so this platform that I worked for, called TrustCloud, was trying this idea that several other startups were also working on, which is to aggregate all this different data, all these different layers, into like a business card, and like a portable online profile that you could use everywhere on the web, on all these different platforms. It's a very interesting concept, I think, and definitely has a future. But there are very many questions that come up in that context as well, like where does this data go, and who owns it? How do you access all of the information? So this is also, TrustCloud is still around, but it's also having difficulties, and I must say that many different things have been tried, but it seems that the right recipe hasn't quite been found yet. But this is just an interesting thing to keep an eye on, and to know that there's people out there trying to figure out how we can really use all of this trustworthy data that we collect all over the web, and for that really to make it the basis of the collaborative economy, to make it easier to trust others and really use these platforms on an everyday basis. So that is really like the general introduction to some of the challenges that the sharing economy, collaborative economy faces. There's definitely several more, and it'll be interesting to see how things develop. But I'd definitely be open for some questions about any of these things. Any questions? I'll just wait 1 or 2 minutes. Yes, right. Okay, so yeah, Alienda just brings up a very interesting question. Huge differences between Airbnb and Couchsurfing, and another point that I actually also meant to mention, which is the community aspect. So building a community of people that share interests and gather around a platform really seems to be one of the best ways to create trust. And you can see huge differences between the Couchsurfing community, which is really people with the same mindset, and this people versus profit question, because Couchsurfing is free and Airbnb isn't. And it's definitely, one can definitely say that on platforms like Airbnb and how they work, they're trying to make the transactions less and less human, actually. So originally, or the way they advertise, they say travel like a human, right? But so when you look at it, they're changing the transaction process more and more to become just like a hotel booking. So now you can actually do a direct booking. You don't actually have to write a message to another person first. So it's really just as immediate, and it's supposed to be really, really practical. And an interesting thing that I've heard very often now is that people that host on Airbnb feel like the expectations are very, very high towards them, and that they're not necessarily being treated as well anymore by the people that stay with them, because they say, hey, I'm paying for your service and I expect this level that should be, you know, the same as in a hotel. And so that's definitely an important question. I'll take one more question, I guess, if Pavel says I have enough time. 1 minute. Okay, so one other good question, which is that when you go to a store, obviously, you also assume that people won't steal from you, and that also now in online stores, people are more trusting. And so I think an important point there is that obviously when e-commerce emerged, or everything on the internet, people were very afraid, and they were not trusting at all. They thought what would happen, and thought, you know, everything was a scam. And then just over time, due to experience and people validating that what they were doing with good experiences, the trust grew.
Okay, can you hear me? Unfortunately, Francesca lost her connection, but I have mine after some fight. We will try.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you, Francesca, right now. Could you finish your sentence?
Yes, I don't know if I was cut out, but I just said I was going to hand over to public.
We will go further into this conversation now with public. So I thank you very much for your introduction to the challenges. Please switch off your mic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction to the challenges of the sharing economy. I'm sure that as it matures, we will, as a community, we will try to figure out more and more issues, and a lot of projects going on, and people are doing improvements with the models of cooperation. So we will now back to the public, and public will ask a question: why should we care about this all economy? So I will give you a voice, public. Please welcome public with warm applause.
I cannot hear anything. Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for this invitation. I see lots of okay, clap, thank you. So I'll put a timer on, because sometimes I can go blah 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 with my math ramblings and it never ends. So I put 5-minute timer for the first part. And why should we care? So I don't want to answer this question alone, definitely. I would like that everyone tries to find one own answer. I will just try to talk a bit why do I care and why I think it makes sense to care for me. And myself, I would focus mostly in lower the volume a bit. I can't really control my volume here. Yeah, I mean, if it's not too bad, maybe you can lower your volume, because I would need to go in the console and mess with it, and I don't want to break anything. Yes. So coming back to my topic, so one of the things I would like to focus, actually, we'll talk about currencies and actually how we can approach currencies differently. And also, often I see that when people talk about economy, we talk about collaborative economy, and nowadays often people mix economy with finances. I hear often people talking about economy crisis in economy, while I see crisis in finances, which doesn't need to apply crisis in economy, because I see finances just as one of economical tools we can use. So actually I will move on to the next slide. And actually I quite liked when I found this slide, because I work with this topic of money for quite some time, and sometimes I look for ways to illustrate this phenomena, and I find this image illustrates it very well. So actually I really invite you to take a look at it, and then in the future when you think about money and you try to question this concept we call money, you can think of this image as a kind of little reference. And maybe I will get a bit more to the point at this moment. So myself, just to clarify it a bit, myself I have quit using money over 4 years ago, and since that I work on supporting development of alternative ways of approaching economy, different economical tools. And what I find very interesting with this whole money thing, that most people grew up with it, we've conditioned ourselves to live in an environment where people believe in this concept of money, but we often question it. And if you look at it yourself, you can notice that if you look at the world with physical reality and our imagination, our fantasies, actually the whole money exists in this imagination of human beings. So if you look at those 5 senses we use to interact with physical reality, you can't really touch money or hear money or smell money or taste money or even see money. You can see a paper bill, a piece of paper, you can see a metal coin, you can see a piece of plastic, but all of them just have a symbols which represent money, but they trigger association in our mind. So often we talk, oh, we lost money, we saved money, we make money, which I find completely weird to say, but yeah, sometimes we lose track that it only exists in our belief system. It's certain convention, certain technology, certain information system that we use as a human beings. And again, only human specific. No other participants of natural environment can interact with money. It only happens in our imagination, in our relations. So yeah, again, I would encourage you, I will not be able in 5 minutes to explain it too deep, but just I would try to encourage you to investigate yourself further. And one of my kind of findings, or like kind of refined approach to looking at money, boils down to observing that we as a human beings use this phenomena we could refer to as money to influence decision of other people. So again, you can only interact with money with other people. You cannot do something else with it than interact with other people. And usually you interact with other people, and other people interact with you to influence your decision. So if you go somewhere and you ask, can I have this, or can you help me with that, the person may say no. But if you go and say, oh, can you help me with that, and I give you this money, the person may say yes. So in practice, we only use it to influence each other's decisions. And I sometimes find it very, very poor foundation to make our decisions, because we don't pay attention to the whole picture. We don't pay attention to the actual physical reality, how things connect, how things affect each other, what impact our decision has. We give too much power to this fictional tool of money, which influences our decisions. And yeah, so as a few of examples, how I see like following the logic of money, making something that completely doesn't follow our common sense. Okay, I have an alarm clock. I'm going too long. I would use an example, for example, quite famous one with the microchips. Like many years ago, people developed some microchips, and they decided to make two series out of them: a faster one and a slower one, because they found that they can make more financial profit if they have two levels, like a fancy one, exclusive, and a more low budget one. So they started destroying certain calculation units on some microchips to make it the lower quality. So again, they had really good quality chips, and they put extra effort to damage them just so they can speculate with money. So again, for me, this money logic affected this bit more of a common sense to actually destroy something and offer people lower quality service or goods. Similar, many people talk about design for obsolescence, that people having capacity to design technologies to last for a long time, design it in a way that it breaks so they can sell more of the same stuff, and again, it doesn't follow actual what makes sense for human, for life, for our happiness. It just follows the kind of some of the market logic. And I could go on with those examples, but instead of ranting on how I see money very problematic, I believe many of you can find quite not fulfilling relation to this social construct and this information technology. I would like to share some of the concepts how else we can approach economy and what other criteria we can use in our decision-making processes to don't let money influence it, or at some point really make it immune to these money manipulations and just base our decisions or actually the vision of the future we want to manifest and bring to life. And here I would invite you, I make another timer, and just please stop me when I need to move on. I would invite you to imagine this situation. Again, I talk about the degree of freedom in our choices. So if you look at the left image over here, I can probably make a little one first. So here we have practically no degree of freedom. If you go to the restaurant and you pick a menu and you see just one kind of soup with one price, so you can only choose, should I stay or should I go? You cannot make much more choices here, and that's one one degree of freedom. Now the second one, which I see we have nowadays in our approach to economy with this monopolizing currency, currently mainstream monetary currency like dollars, euro, all this mess, that you can come to the restaurant and look at the menu, you can choose what you eat, but you can still only account for one monopolistic currency. And the third picture, which I aim for that we transition to and work on developing and practicing, that if we go to the place we consider restaurant, we can not only choose what food we will eat, we have also big variety of options how we do the accounting. So it's not just one monopolistic system based on very, sometimes I would say, weird concepts, not really how I see human nature and so on. You have freedom, you can choose per case, per your relation, how you account for it. And now I will go with one example and I will finish this thought. So let's imagine a situation. I happened to stay in Paris, and that's where actually the OuiShare community started. And we do an event in Berlin about collaborative economy to share the ideas and make connections and create space for people to interact and you know, look for synergies. And I would like to get from Paris to Berlin. And someone actually, another person, like I think it's Nicola or I don't remember, drives a car. So there's another person who happens to drive a car and have a spot in this car. So we have this scenario. One of the ways, and actually I practice it quite a lot with hitchhiking, I've been hitchhiking mostly everywhere last 4 years, to take this approach of very like pure gift economy, that we have certain abundance, so there's more place in the car than needed. The person has no really extra effort, or could have, with picking me up, and I can ask, hey, can you take me with? And the person says, oh yeah, sure, I have free spot, I'm willing to help out, so please jump in, and we go. So there's no really formal accounting, it's very informal, very friendly, probably what we know in our conventional family relations. In a cousin or a brother or a sister or someone, auntie asks, hey, can you give me a lift? Usually you say, yes, sure, I'm happy to help you, I care about you. And I find it very beautiful, but at the same time, in that situation, sometimes we need some more formal systems, especially if we have element of scarcity. So in the second scenario, you can imagine that, again, this person, Nicola, he drives to Berlin and he has 3 places and 8 people ask, hey, can I go with you? And then he says, okay, I cannot take everyone, I need to make a decision, how to make a decision. So he says, oh, actually, I have certain expenses related to this trip, I need to get fuel and car insurance and so on and so on. And how can you share this expenses with me? So other people, different people can suggest, and here I will just take options of monetary currencies and time accounting, that the person can say, okay, so if someone can give me 30 euro on 10 bitcoins or 20 evergreens or 30 droppies, it's all different currencies, monetary currencies. Or actually also he can say that he participates in the Paris mutual credit system and the time bank and so on. It becomes a little more open. It's still similar categories of currencies, but at least you are not stuck with this controlled, manipulated state currencies or supposedly state currency like euros and dollars. So you already can start having more freedom. And if technology allows to have those like multidimensional wallets, which we can develop with current technologies, it becomes more open which currency you choose to use in your decision-making process. But still, that's something that I find that exciting, just a bit improving the same concept of like doing something for something. The second one is kind of related, that we can also have like a wish and offer list online, and we can do a little matching, that he says, oh, actually, instead of asking for money to buy something, I can ask directly for what I need, so I don't need money if someone gives it to me, so I don't have to buy it. His aim is to get something or use something, so one way of doing that comes through using money, but if he can get it directly, we can forget the whole money business. So as Pavel says, it's a bit of a barter. So you actually can say, okay, that's what I offer, that's what I need, and let's try to exchange it or share it in a way that we're all happy with. And also with current information technologies, one can do indirect circles. So you can find through your friends network who offer what, who ask for what, and then you can find a circuit saying, okay, here you can make a clearing. So if this person gives this to someone, and this person to someone, and this to someone, at some point we can get this suggestion, we all click OK, and then we say, okay, we make this transaction and we all feel happy with it, no money involved, we can do directly. But again, that's still not so sophisticated, it's a bit like but all I try to, with those 2 examples first, suggest that you don't have to always use money. Just one of the many possibilities, very popular nowadays, I would say over-popular, but yes, it's one of the options. And now we'll go to a bit more interesting topics, a bit more currencies, non-monetary currencies, which involve a bit more of a knowledge and looking at the relations between things and thinking a bit more ahead, what I participate in, what I support, and how it impacts the reality and the life. So he can say, oh, actually, the trip will take 30 liters of diesel. And I may have happened that I volunteered in different, for example, I would not volunteer in those companies like Share BP or Azure, but there's some fuel collective which people can volunteer, and I would say in my decision-making process, I volunteer over there, I help, I contribute to the fuel collective because I see need for fuel. I find it useful to have access to fuel, to use fuel, so it's not I go there to get paid. Just I go there, I think I'll do last 3 minutes and then I'm off. So I go there not to get paid with some weird tokens like bitcoins or dollars or World of Warcraft coin or whatever people want to imagine in their fantasy. I say, okay, I go there because I want that we have fuel. And then I can have shares of this fuel. So we create together with our collaborative effort certain asset, certain like resource like fuel. And I can say, okay, we accounted my contributions that I have this of the fuel, and then when we go with the car, I can say, hey, I don't have money, but I have access to the fuel, so I can fuel the car, so I can share the expense without using monetary currency, just the shared assets approach. Similar with electricity. If people nowadays go work in electricity factories, often they do it to get those fictional tokens, but the people can say, okay, if I contribute, I want to decide where the electricity goes. So for example, if instead of nowadays many weapon factories can buy electricity and some hospitals struggle, it works through money and commerce, and it becomes this kind of imbalance because people just account in these fictional terms. Some people who actually harvest energy can say, no, the energy I worked on will not go to the weapon factory, it will go to the hospital. So it becomes more horizontal, the decision-making process gets distributed among all the contributors rather than centralized into hierarchical way into some kind of management which may not, have more commercial, less community interest. Yeah, so here that's another approach, that in your decision-making process, what you accept as a support, you also can differently decide what you contribute to. So instead of contributing to something you may not really want to see beneficial, you focus on supporting things that you say, hey, I see it makes sense, I want us to have access to this resource or service, so I'll just contribute to it because it just makes common sense to support something we find useful. And then another one goes to the Yes, I have 2 more minutes. So another thing, it's about trust and reputation. And here it gets really interesting. That's why I focus pretty much the most at this moment. For example, Nicola could have said on a OuiShare website, there's no crowdfunding campaign, but there's a button, I support the initiative, I want to help, I want to contribute. And then, when I send the ride-sharing request, and I'm listed as a contributor to OuiShare, to someone who's contributing to the network and helps out, he can get a highlight to say, hey, you said you want to help with OuiShare, and there's a contributor of OuiShare who looks for a lift, so now you have a chance to help. You don't need to donate money, you don't need to work for money to donate money. You can just do a favor just in time when it's needed, and the actual favor. And similar with food and other things, accommodation. If I come to Berlin and I look for a place to stay, for a room, and there's a person, local person who says, I want to support the event, the person can subscribe the wishlist and say, hey, if you need a flat, just ask me and I would gladly support contributors. And at some point, the crowdfunding can also work this way, that there's no need for money, but we actually share the wishlist. So again, I use this kind of symbol to emphasize the variety, that we can really hack the currencies, we can create different information systems. Once again, the currency, monetary currency, only acts as an information system. It's nothing physical, nothing real in this material sense. It just our relationship management tool, which I find very primitive, very legacy, obsolete, and now we can use different one. And the last thing, that all the things I talk about assume existence of certain, especially the last one, those sophisticated ones with asset sharing and the kind of trust and reputation. And actually here the last thing, also with the reputation, if I work a lot on an open source software, I'm contributing to open source software, to at some point the person who has something to offer can have a track of the application she or he uses, and if I ask for a favor, for a lift, for a couch or something, the person can get a highlight, hey, the person who asked for help have contributed to all this software that you use. So if you feel grateful, now you have chance without any money to show your gratitude and reciprocity. And the last thing, that again, those systems, in my opinion, require like certain networking capacity, especially for the reputation systems and so on. And I find that nowadays many people use very, very primitive way also of doing networking, creating those kind of silos. So for example, if you want to offer a rideshare, you cannot with one click say syndicate it in the carpooling and BlaBlaCar and LiftShare and some other hubs. It's like very, very trapping you at this moment. So I also see and work with many people works on it to create networking technologies that don't create those walls and have more fluid, open networking situations. And again, it's up to everyone to support the development, to start hacking, to supporting the development and create the technologies to build currencies. Okay, that was 15 minutes. To build the currencies we really want to use. And again, whenever you use, you can ask yourself, hey, do I really want to do that? Does it really make me do things I believe in, I care about? Or maybe we can find different way of relating to each other. And now, questions. So I see one question, how is trust not in our minds just as currency? So I'll say yes, actually the trust just happens as a kind of phenomena, how we relate to each other. So I would see it's also not material thing, it's something we can use in our decision-making process, but at the same time I find it something more realistic, because it's actual how we relate to each other. It's not that two random people come and, for example, someone asks you for help and someone can say, oh, I can give you $10, or someone can say, I can give you $1,000. And if you just base your decision on a case like that, you can support someone who actually had stolen this $100, or you can support someone who who have done something damaging environment, or you could have support someone who did something you are not really willing to support. And with trust and reputation, it's more different. It's if you really appreciate something, if you appreciate someone's contribution, you can use this factor in the decision-making process to support people you really want to support. And I really look forward that we all support each other. But at present times, when we still need to decide how we prioritize the support, I find the trust and reputation and this more reality-grounded systems more attractive than this very speculative and impersonal, I would say, crippled monetary system. Yeah, I mean, I can put a website. So myself, as I said, I lived without using money for over 4 years now, yeah, it's a bit different because nowadays it's like very monopolized environment. It comes of a quite challenge because no alternative exists for someone to decide I don't want to use money anymore. While we establish more systems, it will become much more approachable for everyone to say, hey, I can choose from the technologies I use in my economical relation. I can keep using money, but I can use different ones. And some people can use multiple ones at the same time. That's what actually I look for, that we use multiple times. And at some point, someone can say, hey, having all those options, I don't want to use this money anymore. And it's like being deprecated. So, do you probably... Yeah, I've quit using money over 4 years ago, so I haven't used money for over 4 years now, and I focus on the programming and developing system which will support alternative economy system. But I think that was my last answer. If you like, you can probably not shoot me an email. I'm really overloaded with emails, but maybe, I don't know, just follow maybe OuiShare magazine or something, and I will also publish more information over there at some point. So, yep. I think that was the last question. Yeah.
Okay, Pavlik, thank you very much for your point of view on the currencies. I find it very interesting to switch some of the ideas about this common thing like money. In my experience, it is very, because in Cohabitat we organize like quite big festivals, and we decided not to use money from institutions, instead finance it from crowdfunding. And I must say that it is totally different value. Totally different value comes with this kind of support, because most of the value comes not in the money itself, but with the context, with the help, and it is how we met with the first festival. So thank you for your point of view. We will go further into this topic, but we'll try to summarize this webinar, and I will now invite one more time Francesca to say some about the OuiShare organization. You will know now how the OuiShare came up to the being. You will know more about this community and the movement around the world connected to collaborative economy. So Francesca, please give us some information about the OuiShare, and then we invite people to the OuiShare Drink in Warsaw. Yes, now you can talk.
Okay, everyone hear me again? Okay. So yes, you probably are wondering now what OuiShare is or why we're doing this, because as Pavel just mentioned, we're having an event in Warsaw. He's going to say more about that soon. Antona unfortunately had to leave, but I'm going to tell you a little bit how OuiShare was created and what we're doing now. So how did it all start? OuiShare really just started from a blog, from a hashtag, just a small Facebook group that Antona actually started in Paris. This was about 2 years ago, and he just started bringing together people that were all interested in the same topics, that had a similar inspiration and wanted to find new ways to work, that were sort of frustrated with the traditional job market, and as he had mentioned in the beginning, wanted to build their own jobs instead of looking for one. And so this group of people really started growing. They started sharing a lot more than just a couple ideas, and the Facebook group grew until finally people started feeling like, hey, this is more than just a group, we need a name. And so this group then was, they decided on the name OuiShare. And really, like after giving that name, that's when it all started and really spread out all over different countries. And an interesting development was that the same thing was sort of happening in other places at the same time. So in Italy, in Spain, also in Germany, there were different blogs. So here in Germany, there was cokonsum.org, for instance, where different people wrote articles about these topics. And so once OuiShare had its name, that really started bringing together people from all the different countries that were interested in those topics. And so that is really started turning OuiShare into a global organization with communities all over the world, and really like this growing group of people that were very internationally focused. And so we had our first international event about a year and a half ago. That was in May in Paris. That was a so-called OuiShare Summit, of which we have them every 6 months. We had one in Rome and Barcelona, and the next one is coming up in Brussels, which is going to be the end of our Europe tour. And so sort of from that summit is where it all really started emerging and growing, and on a very local level. So on the one hand, OuiShare being a very global organization, but also very locally rooted with local communities in different cities. So how did I actually end up involved in all of this? As I mentioned, I wrote my bachelor thesis about the collaborative economy and the role of trust. And it sort of all like happened really quickly. I interviewed many different people in my thesis and pretty quickly realized that all of the experts were somehow involved in OuiShare. And so after talking to many of them, I was recruited pretty quickly, as one could say. And I kept getting more and more involved and really pulled into the organization. And so that's how now, over a year later, so what do we actually do? Because that's the most important question. Let me see here if I have a slide about that. No, I don't. So OuiShare has like sort of 4 different main activities that we've sort of mapped. So on the one side, community building, which is what we're doing now, what we do with all these events. We have had over 100 events in 2 years, which we have really been able to organize through contributions of all of these local communities. It was really an amazing experience. The same with also this conference that we organized in May. It was called OuiShare Fest, and we had 300 people for 2 days, and then an open day with about 2,000 people that was for the public. And that was a really interesting event. It's sort of a collaborative experiment of community building and involving a huge number of people in the organization process of this event. And it was really very fascinating to see how many people got involved, even just with small contributions. And that's really something that's very important to us and that we really want to develop more, this local, global collaboration and community building in different cities. And so then, on the other hand, we have our think tank, as we call it, which is our online magazine, OuiShare.net, which was created about a year ago. At the moment, that magazine is in 3 different languages, so it's in Spanish, French, and English. German is also on the way. And it's a collaborative online magazine where we publish our thoughts, and anyone can publish ideas about the collaborative economy. And on the other hand, we have 70 Facebook groups, which is really one of our core activities, which is really quite funny. Obviously, since OuiShare was created from a Facebook group, somehow it's in the DNA of the organization that we do a lot on Facebook, even though it's a very closed platform, and we would prefer to be on an open source platform instead. But so we have these 80 Facebook groups where people organize by different languages, by different cities, and also by topics. So there's a lot of expert groups where people discuss about different things such as like mobility or nutrition or finance. And it's a really great way to connect experts across countries and different sectors to really have deep conversations and produce a lot of knowledge. And so then on the think tank area, we also are starting to do more and more research about the collaborative economy. That's an area we're going to start some more projects soon, since the collaborative economy is really so new and there's a lot of research to be done. And then lastly, what's really important to us is action. So really also doing things and not just talking and thinking about them. So that's why we also call ourselves a do tank. And it's sort of an incubator for projects and like a network to help people launch different projects and really carry them out. OuiShare Fest is one of those projects that we're also going to continue to do and have every year. The magazine was such a project. We also, for instance, have OuiShare Labs, which is a group that also public is in, of people that are more interested in web development and work on different projects, have a hackathon, for instance. And a job board is also another project that we launched very recently, a job board focused on the collaborative economy. And so with those different, in those different areas, really a lot of people can express whatever they'd like to do and find a way to get involved on whatever level they're interested in. And so then the last part of our activities I should still mention is services, which is also just being developed, which is also trying to impact organizations and public institutions to work with them to help them innovate and also embrace these new collaborative models. So that's pretty much an overview of our activities. Maybe lastly, just to give you an idea of how big the organization is, we have about like 10 people that are heavily involved, so half to full-time, and then about 50 that contribute a lot on a regular basis, and then like about a circle of like 400 people. It's also growing though, and it's very hard to define, of people that get involved once in a while and are in different communities. But in general, it's a completely flat organization, non-hierarchical, and so since we don't even have a definition really of a member, it's completely fluid and it changes all the time. And that's also what makes it very interesting. Yeah, so are there any questions, since OuiShare is sometimes a bit hard to understand? None at all?
I have one question.
Yes.
The organization is completely flat. How do you make decisions connected, for example, with the big festival? It was organized in Paris, for example. How is the process of making decisions?
Yes, that's a very good question. That's also something that is part of our permanent beta, as we call it, which is we are always sort of working on improving the decision-making process. What's interesting is that since OuiShare grew a lot faster than we were able to create structures, we didn't actually have an official decision-making process till about a couple weeks ago that we sort of agreed on. So also following Falkening's book Swarmwise, we decided to have consensus decisions and not democratic ones, because it's very hard to sort of create a good atmosphere if you have those kind of decisions, because someone always loses when you have a vote. So we decided that only in the last resort do we actually vote, and that all decisions that like are pertain to the entire organization, or also things like finances, that those need to be decided by the connectors group, which those are people that have, this is like a kind of title that we have for everyone who's more involved and is, for instance, a connector for one city or for a topic. And so that's sort of like the circle of people that need to be included in this consensus decision. But otherwise, we have had very informal structures so far, which in some ways has been really, really helpful and like has made us be able to be very, very agile and react really quickly, something that traditional organizations can't do. But of course, on the other hand, this can create some intransparency. So we have to, we're working on finding the right middle in between, sort of having too much structure and still staying really flexible. Justina wants me to explain agile. Yes, agile means like when you can react quickly and you're sort of very flexible, movable. I don't know if that is explained well enough. Natalia also asked a good question, how are we financed? That's a question we get a lot, which is that we are not financed yet. So all the contributions are voluntary so far, and all we have financed are specific projects. So OuiShare Fest, we had sponsors, we sold tickets. For the first round, since it was like an experiment, we didn't actually almost pay anybody for any of their contributions, something that we're working on changing in the future, because we obviously need to value the contributions we get. But so far it's been very project-based and all the events have been sponsored. But at the moment, this is what we're working on, and also at our next summit in Brussels, we're going to move on the next steps of structuring the organization and then hopefully getting different sources of funding, also crowdfunding, which is what we're looking at. And yes, I thought I saw one more question. Oh yes, last really short answer to what is the organizational structure. So we're a nonprofit. I totally forgot to say that. So it's a nonprofit in France, an association. And the question is also if we're going to keep that structure or change, since it's a very, very international and European organization. And we really need an organizational structure that doesn't actually exist yet, which is definitely interesting. So other questions, feel free to talk to me on Twitter, on Facebook. You can find me under Francesca Pick. I can also type you my email address if you like. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Okay, Francesca, thank you for the introduction to the OuiShare organization. Please switch off the mic because we have an echo. Okay, thank you. So, people, now you know some basic information about the collaborative economy, the sharing economy, but I know you want to know more. Some people said that this webinar was too much about theoretical examples, but I can assure that there is a lot of real-life examples of working sharing economy. And we came to the idea that we can meet up in the real life. Actually, it is like a tour all over the Europe. And there is one point in Warsaw that we can start to continue to discuss these topics in the real life and meet each other. And as a member of this organization team, I would like to kindly invite you to this OuiShare Drink in Warsaw on the 9th of November. We will send you all detailed information about this meeting, and you will be able to meet most of people speaking tonight, who are speaking tonight. And on this webinar, there was like 300 people registered for watching this meeting. So we have like 100 places to accommodate. So hope we will fill up the space. And yes, we had some technical difficulties today, but finally and likely we finished with the whole webinar. And I would like to thank you for your attention, and also would like to thank you all to all speakers who contributed their time and their knowledge and shared all the information about this rising next economy. So please follow the OuiShare websites, OuiShare fan pages to catch all the information. We will inform you on the email with the latest info about this meeting. So thank you very much for your attention, and see you next time on the next webinar. Best for you.